Hi everyone, welcome into this week's My Weekly CBS Fix. In this week's Parsha, Parshas Mishpatim, we learn about a controversial topic. I say it's controversial only because many people don't understand the laws that surround this topic, but that is the laws of a Jewish person owning a slave. As I once heard somebody say, I don't believe in a God that is pro-slavery. And unfortunately for him, he just didn't understand what the laws are vis-a-vis a master and his slave. We get our concept of a slave from, unfortunately, what happened to the blacks, or from, in general, people, whoever is just treated lowly, or they're whipped, or they're made to do low work, and our hearts certainly go out to that. And so therefore, most people's concept of slavery certainly seems to have a negative connotation. However, the Torah's concept of slavery is quite the opposite. If a man steals and he has no way to pay back for the theft, he is sold by the courts sell him, and a person comes along and purchases that person. The money that is used for the purchase then goes to repay the theft. But now, however, the slave is now under the master that bought him. Now, what does this mean? What is he allowed to do? Was he not allowed to do to the slave? So let's first get out of the way what is forbidden for the master to do to his slaves. First of all, it is forbidden for the master to make his slave do unlimited amounts of work. He's not allowed to just tell him, just keep working. He's not allowed to do that. Also, it's also forbidden to make him do any unnecessary work that does not need to be done. Just to have him do work just so he should be busy is also forbidden. It is also forbidden to do anything that's degrading. It would be considered degrading work. Let's say you can't tell, go bring me my clothes. Bring me my clothes. I need them in the shower, and make him walk back and forth, or to put on your shoes. That's also forbidden, degrading work. The only exception for that is if in his former life, before he was a slave, that was something that he did. Let's say to be a barber, for example. To some people, they might consider that degrading. But if that was his profession beforehand, you'd be allowed to have him do that as well. But in general, you're not allowed to have him do any degrading work. It's also forbidden to humiliate your slave. He's not all of a sudden somebody, your verbal punching bag. Not only can you not humiliate him in general, you can't even call him your slave. You can't say, that guy's my slave. You're not allowed to say that. As a matter of fact, that's actually why the Torah says an Eved Ivri, a Hebrew slave, to remind the master that he's not a slave, he's actually a Hebrew. But because he's going through this rehabilitation process for the sin that he did of stealing, and because he cannot pay for it, so he has to be a slave for 6 years. It is also forbidden to give him different foods. A master cannot eat perfectly fine bread while he gives his slave coarse bread. And he can't give himself old wine while his slave enjoys or doesn't enjoy as much the new wine. Whatever the master is eating, that's what the servant has to eat. Whatever the master is drinking, that's what the slave drinks. Top wines, the best wines, he's treated as an equal. As a matter of fact, even his own quarters, sleeping quarters, have to be the exact same. These are the rules that every master must follow for his slave. So why is he being sold into slavery? He's being sold into slavery, as we're saying, as a rehabilitation. He stole. He wasn't allowed to steal. He's supposed to pay back. Now, unfortunately, he doesn't have money to pay back, and therefore, he sells himself, but he only works for 6 years. After that time, he is hopefully rehabilitated, and he's able to go back to the free world, back to the world of being a slave only unto Hashem. Being a slave unto Hashem is certainly the best benefits. Now, why is it 6 years? Just to propose quickly, it's 6 years because Hashem wants to connect it to creation and connect it to us being freed as slaves from Egypt. Hashem created the world in 6 days and rested from the seventh. So too this slave will work for 6 days and rest on the seventh. And at the same time, Joseph was sold into slavery. And eventually, though, after some time, Hashem freed him. So too also this slave also gets freed. And so that's why that's what happened to us. We were eventually freed from Egypt. So that is the reason why it's the 6 years. But to get this misnomer out of people's minds, I just want to share these ideas. Didn't have any thought-provoking questions, but I definitely wanted to shed a little light on this mitzvah. Have a great Shabbos. Talk to you next week.